Some mixed action going on here as the market is gapping down but well off of its lows. Just 30 minutes ago QQQ was in the 84.20s, or sorry, 84.40s, and now here you are 30 cents higher. SPY was down near 174 and a nice 7-point bounce there, so we'll see what shapes up. Starting out here looking at Tesla, I've got a over under 177.50 set up. Where the over is looking for 180s and the under is looking for 175 on down. Tesla enters the day neutral to bullish. A close above 182.50 is bullish. A close below 173 is bearish, and a close in between those two prices keeps things neutral to bullish. Yesterday, Tesla gapped $3.40 higher. The price moved below its opening price right away and downtrended below its initial 3-minute low and 6-minute low to an initial 15-minute low. Then from 9:45 to 10 o'clock, Tesla bounced back nicely and actually managed to make a new high a day. However, that new high was not sustained, and Tesla then found itself in a slow-paced sideways channel from 10 o'clock on into the rest of the day. So that gap higher yesterday got sold first 15 minutes of the day before a good bounce back higher the next 15 minutes of the day, and after that, Tesla was just dead money. You know, after 10 o'clock, there really wasn't a lot you could do, as it was pretty much just restricted to a sideways channel. And that was a major theme amongst lots of stocks yesterday. More on that in a moment. Looking at Netflix, gapping down slightly but off of its low here. Got an over under 405 setup, where the over is looking for a move towards 410. And the under is looking for another test of 400 and the 390s, which you saw get hit yesterday. Netflix enters the day neutral to bullish. A close above 408.50 is bullish. A close below 397 is bearish. A close in between those two prices keeps things neutral to bullish. Yesterday, Netflix gapped 90 cents higher. The price moved above its opening price at first, but that only lasted the first couple minutes of the day, as Netflix then reversed and started falling to new lows, falling really hard from 933 to 942, coming below its initial 3-minute low, 6-minute low, and a round number reference point in the form of 400. So you just had a good sell-off, you know, first 12 minutes of the day. However, just as good of a sell-off, you had a good bounce then from 9:42 into the 10 o'clock hour as Netflix rallied back to new highs and made up all of its losses from the first 10 minutes of the day or so. That move to new highs, though, then stalled out around 10:45, and Netflix was then in a sideways pace channel similar to Tesla the rest of the day. But Netflix, you know, you had a lot of volatility the first hour or so. You had that good hard move lower off the open, and then a good hard bounce back during the 10 o'clock hour. That volatility, though, disappeared after 10:40, and Netflix was sideways the rest of the day. Looking at Apple, which is more or less flat, slight gap lower, off of its lows, was printing some 505s when I started taking notes about 40 minutes ago, so you are off of that low. I've got an over under 507.50 set up, where the over is looking for 510 plus. A challenge of that earnings day high of 515 would be in play. and the under is looking for a move back down towards 500, where 490s are then in play. Apple enters today neutral. It had been bearish every day since its earnings report, but yesterday registered a neutral close. A close above 516 is bullish. A close below 502.75 is bearish, and a close in between those two prices is neutral. Yesterday, Apple gapped $5.40 higher. The price moved above its opening price right away, but similar to Netflix, stalled out first minute or two and reversed to trade lower, coming below its initial 3-minute low at 9:33 and declining the first 15 minutes of the day overall. At 9:45 though, that low of day, Apple ended up reversing and rallied back nicely to a 10 o'clock high of day. After 10 o'clock, the price stalled out and pulled back towards its initial 6-minute low ahead of 10:30 before stabilizing at that reference point and bouncing back to new highs from 11 to 11:25. After 11:25, Apple was just in a sideways high-day channel amidst a very slow pace. Overall, it was a tight range day. You had some upside to it, but it could never really get going with serious momentum. Wow. Looking at Amazon. Gapping down about 0.5%. I've got an over-under 347.50 setup, where the over is looking for 350s, and the under is looking for 340, with support being 345 first. Amazon enters the day bearish. A close above 361 is bullish. A close below 354 is bearish. And a close in between those two prices would be neutral. Amazon yesterday gapped $3 higher. The price sold off right away, moving below its opening price and initial 3-minute, 6-minute lows successively, falling to a 9:45 low a day. At 9:45 though, Amazon then started a really hard bounce that lasted until 10:35, in which new highs were made. Amazon was able to come above 350, round number reference point. However, that move wasn't sustained, and after 10:40, the price entered a slow sideways downtrend that lasted into the close. So the gap higher got sold the first 15 minutes of the day, but that gave way to an awesome bounce from 9:45 to 10:35. After 10:35, the pace slowed down dramatically, but there was still a decent directional move lower overall. Looking at Google, which is gapping up here on some good volume, right back towards that 11:45 level we were trading around yesterday. Used it to really help us dictate, a couple trades. First getting us out of a short, first getting us into a short, but then getting us out of that and into a long once you were able to get some 11:45 holds. So this is good that it's back at that reference point. We can just go with over under 11:45 again, just like we did yesterday. And the over is looking for 11:50s, where the under is looking for 11:30s. 11:20s are in play if Google can come below yesterday's low and break Monday's close, because you gapped up yesterday, so you've got a gap between Monday's close and yesterday's low. Monday's close was around 11:32, 11:33. So, if you break below that, Google could come under more pressure here. I think Google's kind of a market leader, and this is a stock that is going to really bear the brunt of whatever the market decides to do. If this market sells off further, then I think Google is primed to go down towards 1100. If this market stabilizes, then I think Google's set up well to, channel back higher towards its all-time highs that we saw put in last week. bottom line, I think Google's going to be very sensitive to the market. Every stock is somewhat sensitive, but Google, to me, it's the big bad boy right now. He's the leader of the clan. So, I definitely want to be focused in and in tune with what movements it's deciding to make. Google enters the day neutral. A close above 11.55 is bullish. A close below 11.27.25 is bearish, and a close in between those two prices is neutral. Google yesterday gapped $4 higher, and the price action was very whippy off of the open, first moving above its opening price right away, but then giving up that move the next couple minutes and kind of just repeating that pattern over and over again the first 15 minutes of the day overall. At 9:45, though, Google started a clean move higher when it broke above its initial 3-minute, 6-minute highs, and that move lasted until a 10:05 high a day. After 10:05, the price entered a totally sideways channel that lasted until 1 o'clock. After 1 o'clock, Google started a slow-paced directional move lower that persisted into the close. So you had whippy action at the open, did give way to a nice little move higher into 10 o'clock, but that move wasn't sustained and gave way to sideways action. And then come afternoon, 1 o'clock or so, Google came under pressure and it stayed that way into the close, albeit at a slower pace when compared to Monday. Looking at Priceline, slight gap lower in the price, but you can't really make any assessment based on the bid and ask, and the volume is our typical really low Priceline volume here. I'm going to stick with my primary setup, which is over under 11.25, where the over is looking for 11.30s. And the under is looking for the 11 teens. 11.15 on down would be in play. 11 teens, however you want to classify it. Priceline enters the day bearish. Let me double check that though. I think that might be a typo. Yeah, it is. So that is a typo. Priceline enters the day neutral. Priceline enters the day neutral. A close above 11.40 is bullish. A close below 11.13 is bearish, and a close in between those two prices is neutral. Yesterday, Priceline gapped $4.40 higher. Price sold off right away below its opening price, but it put in its low of day first 10 minutes of the day when it wicked off of its initial 9-minute low and started a solid rally that lasted until a 10:10 high a day. After 10:10, Priceline stalled out and moved back lower, but not with major momentum, and that ultimately set up what was a persistent slow-paced sideways channel that lasted throughout the rest of the day. So some whippy price action off the open gave way to a clean move higher from 9:45 on, but that wasn't sustained during the 10 o'clock hour, where instead a sideways trend developed into the afternoon, and you had a decent little fade from 1 o'clock on. So my main takeaway from yesterday is that there was some movement the first half hour of the day, first 30, maybe 45 minutes, but for the most part, you didn't get any directional extension during the 10 o'clock hour, either to the upside, taking out previous hourly highs, or to the downside, coming below previous hourly lows. So, one of the things I'm watching for today, yesterday we were watching for initial 15-minute high breakouts. Today I'm watching for just some better 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock directional movement to signal that there's going to be better follow-through today and a better trading environment overall. Yesterday was a pretty poor trading environment for day traders, looking to trade direction. So, need to see better 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock directional extension. In other words, you want to see new highs being made during that 10 o'clock hour or new lows being made during that 10 o'clock hour. And more than that, you want to see them being sustained as well. Looking at QQQ, which said is gapping down, but well off of its pre-market low. Let's go with an over-under 84.75 setup, where the over is looking for 85s, and the under is looking for a move down towards 84. QQQ enters the day neutral. A close above 86 is bullish, a close below 84.75 is bearish, and a close in between those two prices is neutral. I want to address a question that I received, a very good question I received emailed to me pre-market, just asking about markets as a whole across the world. How intertwined are our markets? Does what's going on in Asia and Europe, in those markets, if they sell off, does that mean we're going to sell off here in the United States? Or, do I look at that? How do I factor that into my analysis? Or if we have really good days over in Asia, how do I factor that in over here? And, the first thing is, number one, it's all subjective. Any analysis, nobody can tell you how to do your analysis. So if you're looking at stuff in Asia and you're using that to build theses for what's going to happen in the U.S. market, that's fine. But as with any thesis or any analysis, you want to observe and then see, okay, is that actually accurate? If China's down 1% and we're not down 1%, then you can't really say we're being affected by it. So you need to observe, come up with the hypothesis and observe and try and reach some conclusions. That's first. Second, I'm of the belief that everything is connected. I certainly believe that markets in general somewhat move together. I think we definitely impact each other's markets. If we're doing great in the U.S., then I think that can only help other countries, and I think if other countries are doing terribly, then that can only hurt the U.S. Now, with that said, myself personally, I don't make a real conscious effort to be aware of what the Nikkei did or what the DAX did or the FTSE or the Shanghai Composite Index or any of that stuff. I really don't make a conscious effort, so I personally don't factor it into my analysis too much. I'm trading a very select group of U.S. stocks, so I kind of view that stuff as kind of just noise. And without knowing what those other markets have really done, I can tell you just from being in tune with the U.S. market that I think most likely the foreign indices are probably down a decent amount over the last 2 weeks. So, again, for me personally, I don't factor it in. It's not important to me. But what's important to me doesn't need to be important to you. What's important to you doesn't need to be important to me. Everything with analysis is completely subjective. My strategy just I like to really focus in and eliminate a lot of outside stuff. I used to be much more in tune with that stuff. I used to have a notebook tracking the Asian indices, but it was just too much energy for me to really keep track of that stuff. and I found it much easier to just focus in the way I do. And I can't recall a time over the last year when I made a poor trade, or I lost money on a given day, and then all of a sudden I realized, man, China was down 2% or Japan was up 1.5%. If I would have known that that was going on in China or Japan, I would have traded completely differently today. I've never had that conversation with myself. I suppose if I had had that conversation with myself, I would look at things like that much more differently. But as it is, I haven't, so I don't. Well, it'd be interesting to see this market. I'd just say focus on 1750. We know key support on the S&P is 1733 to 1739. Below that, 1700 would come into play. Key resistance is that 1770 to 1780 range, as that was support before all of this started happening. Looking at DDD, a stock that I know a handful of you guys trade. I've traded in the past. Huge gap down today off of a negative earnings reaction. And DDD, this just simply isn't good. You're giving up 5 months, 4 or 5 months worth of gains. From October was the last time you were in the 50s. And, in trying to find some support, I would say, 55 to 57 is an intriguing area to maybe go long against. You've got to start gapping down 24%. That's a bit extreme to me. You're going to be down nearly 50%. I mean, off of your most recent, well, I guess not that much. 97.28 is the all-time high, so half of that would be around 48, 49 or so. So maybe that's where DDD is going overall, towards that halfway point. You had a lot of congestion in the $50 to $57 range from September through October, early November, before it really got up and started going. So this move is putting it back down in that range. So I think it's a decent little area to maybe try and go long and catch a little bit of a bounce. You got to see how it shapes up at the open. But, 24% seems a bit extreme. But, hey, this is a good example of what can happen to a momentum stock once the air gets taken out. DDD, you talk about fundamentals. DDD, I know, has a PE ratio at one point in the hundreds. So I don't know where the PE ratio is now. And you guys know I'm not much of a fundamental guy. But still, that's the argument people have been making, the bears have been making, is that you can't justify the valuation. And, certainly a day like today, at least for today, validates that claim. So Google getting above 1145 here pre-market, but we don't have a bid above 1145 just yet. Pre-market action in the indices, we saw whippy action pre-market. You want to be aware of that. First we were way lower, now we've come back quite a bit, and we're trying to bounce. So, That could be a characteristic that shows up during the trading day today overall. Just be mindful of that. We'll see what shapes up here once the bell dings. So a couple, primary biases that I've got here. Apple below 506.50 can be a good short. 506.50 was the close on the day of its earnings report. Price line below 1125. That's just the quarter mark above 1100. Touched on Google above, below 1145. Kind of that over/under setup. And those three. Oh, and Amazon below 348. To me, can see 330s. But we've got a few things here where you got to see what shapes up exactly, but it does appear to be some decent volatility, at least pre-market. So 1143 is on Google on the open. Testing 1145 off the bat. Apple's just below 506.50. Google doing this churn right at 1145. Apple spiked above 506.50. Trying to go red to green here. And Netflix above 405. The fuck's going on here? Is anybody else with E-Trade not getting the level 2 coming up on their option trains? Seems like they're picking and choosing. I'm getting all the strikes available on Amazon and Apple. So Google trying to get some stability above 1145, but still hasn't pushed that much above it. Amazon broke 345. Apple still beneath that break-even price. See if Amazon keeps staying down here. Could see some 330s today. You got a 15K bid at 344.50. This is fucking annoying. Google trying to get a little bit further above 1145, a slower pace though. Amazon, if you keep staying below this current high of 346, that would be holding on to gap down losses, and to me would target new lows overall. So I've got my eye on Amazon here versus 346. Google back below 1145. Come on. Apple, another test of red to green. S&P lost 1750. Google extending further below 1145. Apple making a move into the green here. S&P back above 1750. Amazon coming up towards that 346 level. See what this action looks like here on Amazon. Apple testing 510. I've got resistance on Apple at 510.75. Apple, you want to see 508, 509 holds now. Amazon still intrigues me on the short side because you're struggling at that 346 area. Got a wide spread. Remember, I said pre-market 348. If you stay below there on Amazon, you can still trend lower. I took an Amazon 340 put at $1.90 versus this 347, 348 range. But it just doesn't seem to have a great pace off of this gap down. Apple gapped down and made a move into the green right away. Amazon seems slower. Apple testing that key 510.75 resistance. Amazon, this trade will start working if it comes back below 345 in my opinion. While above 345, then you've got a chance for a slow-paced move higher. So again, in an Amazon short, need this thing back below 345. Testing that level now. Testing low a day here. This 345 action is key. S&P back below 1750. Nice speed up in level 2 right here, guys. If we can break low a day, could have something. Still holding that low though, that initial 3-minute low. Like to stay below 346 overall at this point. Testing those 346s here. Nice stall at 346 right there so far. Need to come back down, pressure 345 again. Have anybody going long at 345 getting discouraged? The 346 test. Don't want to build any bids above 346. Another good job coming off of it. Would like to be done with those 346s at this point. Want to be hanging out closer to 345 as opposed to 346. Another low day test here. So breaking low of day. So you can reflush to some 343s. Nice crack right here. I sold into this low day move. I've got charted support at 343, so I'm selling above that support level. Maybe you get a back test of 345. I exited that position at $2.70 from my $1.90 entry. Now you want to see 345 resistance in order to keep playing this thing short. Apple, nice rejection up at that 510.75 resistance. Remember, guys, we had whippy action pre-market. So if you caught some shorts, I do think it makes sense to lock in some principal. There have been, on Amazon, though, we did get this nice break below 345. We got this nice break below 345, so that's good. And we haven't yet bounced back above it. Doing a good job staying below 345. See if that continues here as we get closer to 10 o'clock. So testing low a day again here. Testing that 343 support. If you sold with me when I sold, don't be mad at me if this thing ends up going up 100% like I think it might. Market's under pressure. VIX getting a small gain to it. Watch 20 on the VIX. Watch 20 on the VIX. Just, it's just a round number. Different ball game when you start seeing the VIX in the 20s as opposed to in the teens. But the market's weaker. However, Google's still in the 1140s. Priceline is still in the 1120s. Oh, and guys, remember, we have data coming out at 10 o'clock. So, given the volatility in the market, there are pros and cons to being positioned during a data point. You're likely to get some type of market move off of this data that comes out at 10 o'clock. So if you're positioned the right way into that, you're going to capture the volatility. If you're positioned the wrong way, you've got a good chance of getting whipsawed on that data release. So just be aware of that. Data due out in 4 minutes. During periods of high volatility, I generally don't like holding during an intraday data point. During periods of low volatility, I don't really care if data is coming out or not. To me, it's more important to be aware of the time that data is coming out during periods of elevated market volatility such as right now. The way things are leaning, this market is pulling back, acting like it wants to go lower and test that 1740 level that it held on Tuesday. on Monday. Amazon continuing to test 343 support. Haven't yet gotten off the mat to even challenge that 345 level. Looks like Tesla broke lower. Netflix also broke lower. Both of these moved below their initial 15-minute lows, it appears. Yep. So Netflix, Tesla giving short signals here, where you want to see Tesla stay below 178 in order to stay short. You want to see Netflix stay below 403-ish in order to stay short. And we know 345 is our key level on Amazon. Remember what to watch for. Better 10 to 11 o'clock directional extension. So we either need to start seeing some new lows or new highs here during this 10 o'clock hour that's about to be upon us in order to expect a better trading day today than was yesterday. Here's one of those 345 tests on Amazon. You can see the S&P back at 1750. Back above 1750 here on the S&P. Looks like a initial positive reaction to whatever data came out. 345 test here on Amazon. Apple managed a new high day here. Google back above 1145. Apple looks good for a 515 test today, possibly. Amazon struggling at this 345 back test. I could put back a 340 put back at 250 versus this 345 action that's been going on, as I think there's a chance that it circles back to make new lows off of a 345 reject. But I'm going to have a tight stop around this 345 action. Also watching 1750 on the S&P. Ready to stop out if Amazon's able to hold that 345 level. S&P backtesting 1750. S&P back below 1750, see if it starts holding below that level. Amazon back down, only $1 off low a day now again. Amazon testing low a day here. A new low a day this hour would make me feel really good. Because again, that's my main what to watch for. New lows, new directional movement during the 10 o'clock hour. That was what I was watching for coming into the day. So if I see it, I'll be thinking that 330s are in play. Testing the low here. Alright, so we did get a new low right now. That's good to see. Next support level that I've got is 341.15. Want to see this new low get sustained though. This is good. Good action right now. I sold that second position into this move. I exited at $3.50 from my re-entry at $2.50 on the way down to that 341.15 support. Call that a flip. Alright, don't get cocky. As traders, you can't read your own press. Stay the course. So now, 343, 344, that was our low day. So now we want to see that area act as resistance in order to keep looking for 330s. But I like that we got these new lows during the 10 o'clock hour. And you're still making lows here, right on the low. Quickly though, this is the importance of watching film. I can tell you guys, yesterday I watched film, and on Monday, remember that 1768 retest that I didn't end up attacking? I said to myself, you can't do that, bro. You can't let a good reference point entry go by the wayside after observing some price action. So that's why I got back in Amazon versus 345, knowing that, all right, if you take a loss, yeah, maybe it's 10-15%, but if you end up getting back in and it works out again, now you're compounding your gains. You've got another 30, 40, 50% gain. Risk and reward. Good pressure here, staying down. Similar to the pressure we saw, when you lost 345. Testing that 341.15 support. Breaking 341 here. Good continuation. Really nice speed. Hopefully you're observing on level 2 how fast this action is. Amazon certainly seems to be a good mover today. Hopefully you guys were able to get in on some of this Amazon. At this point, we've gotten down towards that 340. It makes sense to lock in some principal down here if you haven't already. And if you're playing with a couple cons, it also makes sense to keep some exposure, because there is a decent shot that you see some mid to high 330s today. 337. My next support level below 340 is 337.10. So, to me that is a realistic target potentially. But again, we've caught a great move here, so it only makes sense to lock in some profit, reward yourself as you are near that 340 support level. And that was where it bounced from on Monday to yesterday. Remember to balance greed with realistic expectations. We caught a realistic move from 345 down to 340. I exited earlier. And now it is realistic that you can see 337s, but it's also realistic that there could be some support here at 340 and you end up having a bottom. So now let's see, let's look for a reference point on the resistance side. All right, our initial 60-minute low was 343. So let's see if we start putting in time below 343 on bounces. Do we get resistance around there? 343 area as resistance keeps 337 target in play. 343 extension and low day is possibly in place. Watch Google. Google's testing yesterday's low. All right, Google just broke. Google can see 1120s. For whatever reason, I'm not getting a level 2 option on Google. That's why I kind of decided to play Amazon instead. Google, yesterday's low was 1137. So see if you start stalling. 11:30 around that 1137 area. Apple, nice rejection. I know Apple's green and it made a little push, but Apple's weak to me. I mean, bottom line, this thing still hasn't made a significant bounce since its earnings losses. You're going on a week and a half since earnings. Should have started by now. Amazon coming down, testing low day still. Hasn't made a attempt at a real bounce. You know, have that 343 reference point, but so far it's not even coming close to getting up there. For the record, these 340 puts, low day is $1.82. Our first buy was $1.90. Had somebody cancel their trial 2 days in. Said they didn't see enough action. You're not even going to give it the full 5 days? But hey, I can't concern myself with that. Amazon, you know, we've been talking about, but just a great job staying under pressure. The last time we got a 345 bounce, this time we're getting no bounce. I do think if you're being aggressive, you can potentially chase right here for a scalp trade. Maybe these 335 puts. Delta's not too low, you know, 25 cents, 27 cents, so it's just about 10% of the premium cost itself. All right, well, that just got a lot higher, as Amazon did just break that 340 level. So life in the 330s now. So now it's just kind of an over-under 340 trade. And Google continuing lower, price line continuing lower. So we're getting good direction here this hour, guys. And You know, seems like we can keep trading that direction to the downside until we get a bounce where we got to start thinking that low days in place. But in the meantime, that hasn't happened. So So some good moves here. Really just a matter of taking your pick. Tesla, nice sell-off. Netflix, nice move lower. Amazon, you know, we've caught. Google, good continuation to the downside. Priceline, S&P broke 1740, so we're now testing that 1733, 1739 support. Amazon, just no fucking bounce at all. So once I start upping my contract size, I'll be catching a really nice portion of this. I'm not going to nitpick myself for taking profits when I did. I think I took them at support levels, and you know, it is what it is. It's a situation where if you're playing with a couple cons, like I had said, good spot to lock in profits, but also worth keeping some exposure. Anytime you play with one contract, you got a decision to make. You know, keep full exposure and risk taking less profits, or keep full exposure and have the risk of this right here, where that 50% gain is now a 100% gain. Just a matter of personal preference. Yeah, Apple's a weakling. So Amazon got those 337s, very, very bearish. Now it's a matter of, do we think we can see 335s? I think we can if you're stalling in the 340 area. So backtesting 340. Let's see what this backtest looks like here on Amazon. Notice S&P backtesting above 1740. Google key support 1127.25. That's the low from the day before earnings. GG, I hope you're catching some of this, man. By now, you could have made back whatever percentage losses you had from Google yesterday. So that's why I tell you all the time, you just got to move on. So 340 tests here. Let's see what this action looks like. Do we get 341s? If you're not even able to get 341s, then I consider this very bearish and probably a good reshort opportunity here on Amazon. Good continued speed on the level 2 for Amazon. Trying to get some 341s. Let's see what this looks like. Good example right here of certainty for entry point. Aggressive entry point would be to take an Amazon short right here, 224 by 238 on those 335 puts. You know, you could probably get filled at 235 if you placed a bid. That's an aggressive entry point. The conservative approach is to wait, observe the price action, make sure that it comes back below 340, and then you can trade confidently against 341, but obviously your entry point at 340 on those 335 puts is probably going to be in the 250s or maybe 260s. So just trying to show the difference between the potential better entry point that comes with being aggressive as opposed to the, you know, certainty and safer play that comes with being conservative, but you're going to get a lesser entry point. I do like that this 340, 341 backtest is coinciding with a 1740 backtest on the S&P. Getting some bids at 341. Nice wipeout right there off of 341, so that seems like a reject at 341 where you want it to get rejected. But let's see, do you get back above 341 or not? So far, I'd still say this is a stall out and keeps 335 in play on Amazon. You start getting 331 extension, and that takes that aggressive short trade off the table. But so far, it's still intact. All right, getting 341s again. From a short perspective, I don't really like the way it keeps being able to come back to 341, but, you know, let's see. You still don't have bids above it. You still haven't gotten that hard push beyond 341. All right, now you're getting a little bit more. I have no position at the moment. Never re-entered. More 341 stalls so far. You see the S&P making a better push above 1740. Keep going back to the fact that pre-market we had a lot of whippy action, so I'm, choosing to be a little bit more conservative here, especially after two good trades. Big reversals. Google, big bounce. Oops. Short trades might be over. Not getting the stall outs. Google, in my opinion, never should have gotten back to 1140. Amazon, I referenced 341. You started to get some stability above that level. Now it's starting to kind of feel like a chop fest. Still intrigued by Amazon though, because while you're in the 341s, you're not clearing them. Watch the VIX at 20, guys. It's doing a back test of that 20 level. Came off of its high some here. That could be a good tell right here for the market. Does the VIX come back below 20, or is it able to hold? If it's able to hold at 20, this is a good reshort opportunity in my opinion. I'm bidding at $2 on a 335 put. I filled that bid. Trading just kind of versus this 341 action right here that it's been digesting. Ready to stop out if you get some further upside here at about 10% loss. That's kind of my threshold. Watch the VIX, it's right at that 20 level again. Main reasoning for re-entering the short trade is you haven't yet cleared 341s. That was my reference point area. And you did get new lows during this 10 o'clock hour. That was my main what to watch for. And I feel like I can do a good job containing whatever loss I have. Where if this thing ends up making a new low, I'm going to feel stupid for not reshorting right here, just like I felt stupid for not reshorting on Monday. I'll be more upset missing out on a 30, 40, 50% gain than I will be participating in a 10 to 15% loss. That's just where I'm at. Need to come back below 341 in order for this to start working. Good continued speed on Amazon. I like that the speed on a level 2 hasn't slowed down. This thing's either going back into the 330s or it's going to start bouncing towards 345. So testing 341 here. Need these asks to come back below 341 and start building that pressure to set up another test in the 330s. It's a good start. I exited my position at $2.50 from that re-entry at $2. Main reason I exited is just, we came back to 340 and it didn't really flush into those 339s. It's doing a good job staying down here, no doubt, but just trying to keep my pace consistent, keep doing what makes me comfortable.